The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
You want awards? We got awards and more football as well on the program today. We are absolutely loaded up, so please hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to preview what position, Caleb Calhoun, today?
It's a position where the heart and soul of the 98 team was on.
Oh, okay. A little bit of a tease. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. We do have a huge show lined up today. Dalton Knecht, is he the most valuable Vol for his team ever? I think you could make that argument. The Diamond Vols versus the Lady Vols. Divvying up NIL money, how would you do it? And a preview of Tennessee's linebackers coming up. Also, race is playing into Florida's favor, or it's actually hurting the University of Florida with this DEI case that now has kind of hit a different level. We'll get to that a little bit later, but basically the NAACP says go to Florida schools.
No, it's saying don't go to Florida schools.
Saying what?
Saying don't go to Florida schools.
Don't go to Florida schools. So we'll see how that affects the University of Florida. Well, it's saying, we'll get into the politics of it. That's why I love having Caleb here. All right, we got a lot going on, and we're going to go ahead and get started right now. And it's Four Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dynasty Pools and Spas, absolutely fantastic with all of their selection right there in the beautiful Athens area. It is Four Downs, and it's brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Four Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all four seasons. Four Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, so Cooper Mays is going to be the guy that's going to tell us how to go ahead and be a part of the program. As Coop, let's do that right now.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right.
Coop here. First down.
It is first down, Coop, and we're going to start with Dalton Knecht being the SEC Player of the Year. How huge is that for the Vols?
This is incredible. This is a giant deal for the Vols, and it's really just a giant deal for Dalton Knecht. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was second team All Big Sky last year. Guys, let me say that again. Second team All Big Sky. And he went from that to the SEC Player of the Year. And there's a legitimate argument that the SEC is maybe the second best conference in college basketball this year. So, I mean, that is a gigantic leap, guys. I mean, that's incredible. And I thought when Tennessee was getting him, they were just getting another piece of the puzzle. I didn't think they were getting this.
No, I don't think anybody did. Good morning to everybody that's on the message board. What down, Coop? And this is all going to lead to a theme. Some of you think that Caleb's been maybe overly critical at times, especially the Lady Vols when he broke the internet. But he wrote something that was very intriguing. This is leading to a theme. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Zakai Ziegler, Defensive Player of the Year. May I go ahead and take a step back on this one? Because I wasn't a Ziegler fan at the beginning of the year. First team All-SEC, SEC All-Defense. You proved me wrong. I take a step back.
Yeah, Zakai Ziegler is – Dave, think about this for a minute. Zakai Ziegler is 5'9", 160 pounds. Who that size ever wins Defensive Player of the Year or is ever known for their defense when playing basketball?
Nobody.
What does that say about him? That he is a defensive weapon and he's so undersized. We're talking about more heart than, I'm just going to say it. People loved watching Allen Iverson play in 2000, 2001 because it seemed like he took it to 100 every play. I think Zakai takes it to 100. I think Zakai's the first player I've seen that actually takes it to 100 every single play, offense and defense.
Okay, I like that. We're not comparing Allen Iverson and Zakai Ziegler, but we're comparing the way they attack the court.
The way they attack the court, yes. Because the weird part about it is AI only did it offensively, and we gave him a break for being limited defensively because he was so undersized. So all he could really do was just, you remember, he would guard the passing lanes and he would gamble on the passing lanes. Now that worked when Dikembe Mutombo was underneath the basket. Zakai does more than just gamble in the passing lanes, quite honestly. Zakai does help defense. He understands angles. He forces guards to uncomfortable spots on the court. I've never seen a 5'9" guard do that defensively.
Okay. Again, leading to a theme that Caleb wrote about on offthehooksports.com. I'm setting him up like, I guess somebody would set up Nico Ia Maleava in volleyball.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Third down it is, and we have yet another award, maybe? How about Mr. Adu making second team All-SEC and the SEC All-Defensive Team?
Yes, which, by the way, for people, because we didn't mention this, Knecht and Ziegler were both from first team All-SEC, and Ziegler was also SEC All-Defense. Jonas Adu, second team All-SEC, and SEC All-Defense. Jonas Adu, if he logged more minutes, and I think Barnes, I criticized his substitution, but he actually did a good job with Adu because he split him with Toby Awaka a lot. If you did a per 40-minute average, Jonas Adu would be averaging 20 and 12 this year.
Yep. And go ahead.
And yeah, and he's averaging 2 blocks a game. The guy's such a reliable defensive presence. And again, the whole offense still depends. I say it all the time. They go as Adu goes. I'm not saying he's their best player, but they go as he goes.
Oh, Travis stole it. I bid you, Adu.
All-SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
I told you it was leading to a theme. So those of you that don't like Rick Barnes and knock him for being regular season Rick, and those of you that don't appreciate what he's done with 800 wins and a long distinguished career, and those of you that think that Caleb Calhoun can be too critical at times for breaking the internet, calling for Kelly Harper's job. Is Rick Barnes the best developer of talent in the history of blank? And you fill in the blank, Caleb, because you wrote about it. I don't want to steal your thunder, but you bring up a great point. Give it to me.
In the history of college basketball coaching.
Oh my goodness, that's strong.
It is Rick Barnes and Dean Smith are the two best. I give Dean Smith credit. I think it's fair to say, even though Michael Jordan always said Dean Smith held him back, you would agree that the shuffle offense and the way Dean Smith coached had players ready to go to the NBA more than most coaches, right? Really prepared them.
Agreed.
And people will say John Wooden. No, John Wooden just recruited elite talent. John Wooden did no coaching whatsoever, okay? You give me Kareem. Sorry?
Illegally, he paid them too.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, like you give me Kareem in the 60s, I'm going undefeated. You give me Bill Walton in the 70s, I'm going undefeated. Okay, John Wooden just had that elite talent out in Cali fall into his lap. Okay, Rick Barnes takes these 3 stars and he turns them into NBA role players, which is much more difficult coaching than coaching generational Hall of Fame talent. Would you agree, Dave? Like with basketball more than other sports, you're not really coached up into a Hall of Fame talent. You just either are or you aren't, right?
Yeah, I agree with that for the most part.
Yeah. So the real coaching and the real work ethic, well, they all have work ethic. I'm not going to knock that. But the real impressive value you see with NBA players are those role players that last 10, 11, 12 years and may ride the bench. And by the way, they walk away with $100 million in their pocket of generational wealth when they're done.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just be honest. Rick Barnes has turned more players into that weren't qualified to be that than anything. Now, caveat for that, he's not a developer of one and done talent. When I say he's a developer of talent, you got to play with him for a couple of years and get some experience. Now, people will come at me because I'll say Dalton Knecht has only been with Tennessee for 1 year, but Dalton Knecht is a 5th-year senior. So he already kind of gets it. So there was a little less, he was ready to be developed on his weaknesses when he went to play for Rick Barnes. But look at what he's done with Zakai Ziegler. Zakai Ziegler was a 3-star who was 5'9" and is SEC Defensive Player of the Year. That's about Rick Barnes. Dalton Knecht, second team All Big Sky, turns into SEC Player of the Year. That's Rick Barnes. Jonas Adu is developing right before our eyes. Grant Williams is in the NBA right now and a journeyman. And by the way, journeyman's not a bad word. If you're a journeyman in the NBA, you walk away with a lot of money. And he's in the NBA as a journeyman because of Rick Barnes.
Who was the guard at Duke who made like $180 million that we just talked about? That
JJ Redick?
Yeah, JJ Redick. Let's bring in our special guest here every Tuesday. A little bit of technical difficulties, but we've moved through that. John Adams joins us now. John, how are you, sir? You look fantastic. Let's bring that back down a little bit. You were better the first time. How are you, John?
I'm not great. Go ahead.
Rick Barnes, the best developer of talent in college basketball history. What do you make of that statement by Caleb Calhoun?
That's pretty extreme, Caleb.
John, hear me out. I'm not talking X's and O's specifically. Like, I don't think he's actually that great of an X's and O's coach. But in terms of turning players that played for him for 2 to 3 years into NBA talent or just making them better players, Grant Williams should not be an NBA player. He's only an NBA player because of how Rick Barnes coached him. He does not have the profile to be an NBA player. He's too short and he's too slow. But Barnes taught him how to use his leverage and things like that.
He doesn't jump that well either. No, I believe Rick Barnes is a great developer of talent. That's one of the reasons Dalton Knecht came to Tennessee. It's a really good selling point. But I don't know about all the guys who played for him at Texas. I don't really know his history with players. I know what he's done at Tennessee. I agree with you on Grant Williams. A lot of it has to do with Grant Williams's work ethic, determination to make himself better. But I also think what Rick did, you can't ignore that. He can develop talent. There's no doubt about that.
John, I would go to Tobacco Road, and Caleb, before you jumped on, mentioned Dean Smith. I would also mention Mike Krzyzewski, because it's on air and I don't have to spell it, as one of the best developers of talent. John, who do you view as, in college basketball history, the best developers of talent?
Let's see. I'd probably go, Dale Brown was one. I'm kidding.
He had Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Shaquille O'Neal, and what, made the Sweet 16? Did he even make the
second? Yeah, he made this. He never got past the Sweet 16.
Well, it's not about how much you succeed as a winner on the court, though, because that requires some X's and O's. It's how, like, what did you do to turn the players into great, better players? Is that fair to say?
He did nothing in that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Dale Brown did much of anything. But as far as best developers in Tennessee sports history, what it would be basically him and Philip Fulmer, right, John? Now, by the way, I want to remind you that 4 Downs is brought to you by our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Certainly check them out. Bobby Knight is a fantastic answer as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas brings you 4 Downs. And then we're going to have a little conversation here because we've got 3 people at different stages in their career. And Caleb called for somebody's job. And I don't think that John's too keen on that. 60 seconds. Stay tuned. John's making a face. That means good broadcasting up next. Having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Their showroom is open in Athens, right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And then delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. All right, John. So Caleb Calhoun called for Kelly Harper's job. What are your thoughts?
Wow. I mean, do you really think that's your place to say somebody should be fired, Caleb?
John's never done that 18
I'll tell you what,
times.
John.
John's never done that 18 times, has he?
I tried to.
John, I will tell you what, I know my place better than those Lady Vol defenders knew their place on that last three-point shot the other day. It's not the worst defensive alignment in the history of women's basketball or men's.
Well, it wasn't a defensive alignment. I mean, maybe it was a volleyball defensive alignment. I don't know what that was, but when I was in the press room, I was at the Tennessee-Kentucky game, and so I'm in the press room. We're waiting for the coaches to come in, and the screen, there are a lot of people in there. The screen is way far across the room, and I see South Carolina inbounding the ball, and I thought there were like 5 or 6 seconds left. So I didn't think that much of it, and then I saw the shot. And then I was told it was 1.1 seconds. I mean, how could you not have somebody guard a ball? Is it like they forgot? And then I watched the replay, and you got three people lined up around the goal, like there was no time for anybody to drive to the basket. And then, honestly, if they'd have got the ball to Cardosa, she could have probably gone to the foul line and gotten an open pass. It was really bizarre.
Not to mention, before that, because this is like we do our football IQ and this is basketball IQ because we just have to call it out because, John, I don't know if you saw, but before Kelly Harper, because they had 2 fouls to give, she instructed Jewel Spear to give a foul at midcourt. Now, I get giving a foul when they're like inside the paint or kind of on your side, but you don't give the foul at midcourt with a second left because then you give South Carolina a chance to inbound the ball instead of an offense when they have no timeouts left.
So I didn't see that. So what you're saying is they're coming past if you don't do anything, what are they going to do? Just get a desperation shot?
Yeah, exactly. They're just going to they don't have any timeouts. They're just going to get a desperation shot. You don't give a foul in that moment. You give a foul if it's actually when you give the foul is when they inbounded the ball and there's 1 second left, and then you give the foul with like half a second left and make them do it again. You don't do it with 1 second left at midcourt and no timeouts.
Did you see an explanation for that?
No. Caleb just called for a job. That's pretty much
She effectively threw her players under the bus without throwing them under the bus. She effectively kind of said that like they were confused on different alignments they were supposed to have. No one asked about the fouls at midcourt because they were so caught up in the terrible defensive alignment at the end. But to me, the fouls were actually dumber.
Well, it was like there was a whole myriad of things, baffling decisions going on there.
Yes, there's certainly.
But I was Dave and I were talking about this, and I was appalled that you would call for a coach to be fired. And I was thinking back, I don't think in my career I've done that more than a dozen times.
Yes, and you never had coaches take out op-eds in response to you, right, John?
Only one of those. I've called for my editors to be fired.
Wait a second. Well, I forgot about the op-ed thing. Did Philip Fulmer write an op-ed piece?
Yes.
Well, it had his byline on it, but I won't name who I thought wrote it.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Was it Bud Ford or it could have been?
But you know what? He didn't do an op-ed piece when I thought he should be fired as AD. He's the only person I've thought should be fired twice.
That's fair. Okay. Go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. We want you to do that right now. Be a part of the program and turn your notifications on. Cooper Mays coming down the pike shortly, so we always look forward to that. But if you don't have the notifications on, you're not going to know it. And now it's time for today's tough question, and that is brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Today's tough question is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
I'll just open this up for you guys. John, I'll start with you. Is Dalton Knecht the most valuable ball for his team in the history of Tennessee athletics?
Well, he's on a very short list. I mean, when you go through that and you look, I think Peyton Manning is obviously one of Tennessee's greatest players, but the team won a national championship the next year without Peyton. So there's a whole lot of talent there. I don't know how much different their record would have been if maybe T. Martin would have started that year. Maybe it wouldn't have been as good. But I think about this team without Dalton Knecht, and I think it would be struggling to make the NCAA tournament.
Caleb, I agree. You?
I disagree with you guys totally. I'm just going to say it. And the reason I say that is because this team was a sweet.
Well, don't be so subtle about it. Just go ahead, throw it out there, Kevin.
This same team was a Sweet 16 team last year without Dalton Knecht, and they didn't have Zakai. Now, Dalton Knecht looks more valuable. He is valuable, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of it is Rick Barnes kind of changed up the offense dramatically because of what he had in Dalton Knecht. So it makes certain players look less valuable, i.e. Santiago Vescovi in that regard. And so I can't sit there and say I don't think he was more valuable than Candace Parker was to those two Lady Vol national title teams in 07 and 08. Because there weren't that many. That wasn't the same teams that Pat Summitt was coaching in the 90s. They weren't loaded with All-Americans. It was Candace Parker, pretty much, by herself carrying them. They had Alexis Hornbuckle, Cindy Spencer for one of them, but it was Candace Parker. So I can't sit there and say Dalton Knecht was more valuable than she was to those two teams.
Well, I just don't know where the offenses would come from. Vescovi he's lost his shot. He can't shoot anymore. I think he's lost his step too. He plays really hard. I give him a lot of credit, but he just looks a step slower. So does Triple J to me. And I don't want him shooting a three with a game on the line. I just think everything is built around. Yeah, and Ziegler's obviously a really good point guard. But man, I mean, I think this team can make the Final Four. In fact, I would bet on it making the Final Four. And there's no way it would make the Final Four without Dalton Knecht.
Okay, well,
but we're talking about levels of elevation here.
Okay, but hold on a second, because that would change things. Okay, because I understood what Caleb said, and I tend to think that it's Al Wilson, Candace, and then everybody else. Those are like 1, 2, and then everybody else.
Well,
John,
wait, Dave. What one person you got to count is you go to baseball with Todd Helton because he was a pitcher and a great hitter.
Todd Helton is a big one, yeah.
No way they would have gotten close to the World Series without him.
That's true. If they make it to so we got a top grouping there. If they make it to the Final Four, Caleb, does that change your argument? If they win a national championship, does that change your argument? Could your argument be changed?
It would still be hard to do it even if they win the national championship. It wouldn't if they make the Final Four, because you're telling me Dalton Knecht elevates the Vols 2 more rounds in the NCAA tournament from where they already were last year, which was a Sweet 16 team. That's not like this. When you talk about value, you have to talk about level of elevation. This is why I always said I still to this day would take Peyton Manning over Tom Brady, because Peyton Manning turned a 2-14 team into a 14-2 team. The Colts were 14-2 with him and made the Super Bowl, and then 2-14 without him. Level of elevation matters to a certain degree. And Dalton Knecht is elevating a already Sweet 16 team for us to say that's a Final Four team. I'm with John. Like, you're with Todd Helton, you're talking about a team that's probably not even an NCAA tournament team to a College World Series team with Todd Helton. And so, I mean, that's a massive level of elevation. To go back in history, I think you could maybe say that I couldn't say any of the kneeling teams in football because they were loaded with talent, but I could say the 56 team, because Johnny Majors really did carry that 56 team by himself.
True. I think our upper crust, though, is going to be Candace Parker, Al Wilson, Todd Helton, and then Dalton Knecht. So those are our 4. What?
Even Al Wilson, though, Dave, that team is 10-2 without Al Wilson.
That's not winning a national championship, though. And
no, it's levels of elevation. It's levels of elevation.
I don't understand what levels of elevation means.
That's a new term that Caleb has coined. It will become part of our sports vernacular.
Okay. How much do you improve a team over where it would be without you? And so what I mean is, like, if you turn a 10-2 team into a national champion, okay, I think it's more impressive to take a 5-5 team to 10-2 than it is a 10-2 team to a national champion.
Monica Abbott getting a vote as well. I completely disagree with that. I think that's a 9-3 team. I don't think they are anywhere close to where they were because Al Wilson was holding workouts 3 days after they lost in the Fiesta Bowl the year before. So I think his leadership extended 365 days and won them a national title, and I don't think they're close without it. John, of those four, how would you rank them? And please vote on our YouTube page. Al Wilson, Todd Helton, Candace Parker, and Dalton Knecht. How would you rank those 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, it's hard to rank because Dalton Knecht didn't finish. But if Tennessee would win the national championship, I would probably rank Dalton Knecht first. You go back, Candace Parker won 2 national titles with Candace Parker. But there were some good players on that team. Nikki Anasicki, Alexa Hornbuckle. There were other good players on that team. I still think it could have made, I don't know, maybe the Elite Eight. I guess one of my points is with this team, with this current basketball team, I don't think Triple J or Vescovy are as good as they were last year.
Fair. John, did I hear you just say that you would bet on Tennessee to make the Final Four?
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Would you really, John?
Yeah, I would. And I don't ever bet.
Wow.
I learned a long time ago there's no success waiting on you, and there's no rainbow at the end of that at the end of the casino. I don't think you can win betting, but that's a bet that I really like.
Speak for yourself.
Does Caleb win at the casinos? Is that what you're implying?
I win sports betting. You know, some people like to invest their money in the stock market. I invested in FanDuel. I got money sitting in FanDuel, just piling up, guys. You know, some 1% returns. And
BetUS.
Yes, BetUS. That is true. That is true.
And don't take this the wrong way, Caleb, but most people who gamble, who bet a lot, lie about the results.
I don't pretend to hit parlays all the time. I don't bet on parlays except for fun.
Okay,
What I do are take very obvious odds, put enough where I can just get a small return each day.
All right, let's do this. Poorly done segue is what somebody told me, but they're laughing at it. John, let me do this. Let me go. You think Final Four? You would bet on Final Four. I would not. I'd bet on Sweet 16. That's the highest I'd go because of Rick Barnes' track record. I'm sorry, I think they're that good, but I'm basing it on Rick Barnes' track record. Caleb, what would you bet on Tennessee to go that you would put your money on?
No, I'm actually with John. I think this is a Final Four team. I think this team is different, and I think it's different because of Dalton Knecht. So I am high. I don't want y'all to think I'm not high on Dalton Knecht and his value.
Oh, I know.
I'm just saying. Yeah. I just think that this team was already a Sweet 16 team. They were last year. So you take a Sweet 16 team and you add Zakai Ziegler and Dalton Knecht. There's no and a better Jonas Adu. Now, John brings up that Triple J and Santiago Vescovi are not as good as they were last year. I actually argue that I think they're asked to do less this year. I think their roles have changed significantly so. And so particularly Triple J, or excuse me, Santi Vescovi. And they do so much defensively that I think that has more to do with, I think they would still be as good as they were last year if Dalton Knecht wasn't on the team. They just aren't asked to be as good as they were last year.
Portions of the program brought to you by Boundless Moving. They're my movers from a 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations. They've got you covered. Their motto is personal service without limits, not just a tagline. It's part of who they are. It's in their DNA in Charlotte and East Tennessee. Boundless Moving. Just Google Boundless Moving, and you will be glad that you did. We will be back in 2 minutes. And John Adams, has become a bit of a Diamond Vols guy. And we're going to talk about divvying up NIL money, which I don't think any of us are going to agree on. Hang tight. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
John Adams joining us on a Tuesday. We love to visit with him, and I want to remind you that you too can become a John. Join Hooker's Corner for exclusive content and your chance to win great prizes, including that Brew McCoy autographed mini helmet, just $9.98 a month. Go ahead and sign up. We appreciate the Johns that have signed up to this point. John, would you like to be a John in more ways than one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just so you know, Tuesday is Dave's favorite day because there's nothing a hooker likes more than two Johns. My first name is John too, so you know. The pay is double. The pay is double. Usually you get paid double for that.
You pay double for that, Cotton. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. John, let's get into divvying up NIL money. By the way, our poll question is on the YouTube page, so we want you to vote. Let's give a quick update. Most valuable ball ever. Right now, you can vote. Al Wilson with 39% of the vote. Candace Parker, 44% of the vote. Dalton Knecht, 17% of the vote. Todd Helton not getting a vote yet. Somebody give that North Knoxvillian some love. We need to do that.
People don't know ball.
Right. Yeah, I know. All right, John. I am giving you $100 million, which basically just makes the math easy. You have $100 million to divvy up to whoever you want to in Tennessee's athletic department. How are you divvying up $100 million of NIL money? Because we can all say that it's supposed to help everybody, but we all know it's helping football way more than anybody else. Should it be helping the Lady Vols? John?
No. What do I? That's $100 million. Do I get that in my account? How would that work?
Yeah, so you just keep it. It's like an auto draft.
Oh yeah, well I'm just gone. I just suddenly go dark, never heard from again. Yeah. But if I can't do that, okay, I would divvy it up. I would probably give 70% of it to football, because with $70 million, can you imagine the team you could field? You'd be a dominant power. You'd get Nick Saban out of retirement.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I would give 20 million to Tony Vitello for baseball.
You just skipped over basketball.
Yeah. I'll tell you why. I think Tony Vitello is one of the hardest working coaches I've ever seen. I think he's a great evaluator of talent. You give him that kind of money, because money goes a long way in baseball. I mean, these guys don't even get full scholarships. He would have a dynasty. He would win 5 or 6 national titles. He could beat some major league teams. And then, yeah, Dave,
John.
Yeah. Have you seen the Pirates lately?
I haven't.
No, you haven't. Nobody watches them. And so, okay, I've still got 10%. I would give it to the men's basketball program, because Rick Barnes, as Caleb has pointed out, and I agree with wholeheartedly, develops talent. He doesn't need a bunch of superstars. He'll turn them into stars, just like he did with Grant Williams. Do you think Grant Williams, if they had the NIL era, do you think people would have been throwing around a lot of money to sign him? I don't. And Dalton Knecht came here. He's determined he wants to be the best player he can be. He wants to excel in the NBA. And that's why he came to Tennessee. He didn't come here because of an NIL deal. I'm sure he got one, but he didn't come here because of that. He knew Rick Barnes could make him better, and that would enhance his chances of not just making the NBA, but being a star maybe in the NBA. So that's how I would divvy it up. So now you're winning national championships in football and in baseball regularly with that kind of money.
Okay, that skips over basketball. That surprises me. Caleb, you have $100 million.
No, wait a minute. I gave it 10%. I'm giving it $10 million.
Oh, okay. So you gave, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. So you gave football 70, basketball.
Baseball 20, and basketball
20. And see, okay. I mean, you got $10 million. What are you signing? I mean, 5 players. You only got 13 to 15 players on the team. Everybody's making it.
I think Caleb John's assuming you get a Rick Barnes discount like the Nick Saban discount. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But Caleb, how would you spend $100 million?
So, John, I disagree.
Well, I knew you would. Of course you do. You're a contrarian.
First of all, I would go 90% football. I would legitimately go 90% football. And now with NIL for basketball, that is going to leave less for men's basketball. But John, the reason I would put more for men's basketball than baseball is, even though you're right, Rick Barnes doesn't need to recruit the 5-star talent, I would give Rick Barnes the NIL money on a condition, which is this money is to be spent on keeping players, on getting them to return instead of going early to the NBA rather than recruiting new talent. Does that make sense?
It does. Makes it more complicated. I would say.
Well, okay, no, what I mean is so I would take 90 for football, 8% for men's basketball.
8?
Yeah, so I'm at 98%. I'm sorry, I care about the revenue generating sports. And
don't.
And then 1% for baseball and 1% for women's basketball. There you go.
Right.
I've got it.
Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button if you would not spend any money on non-revenue sports, because I would not. I would spend 100% of the cash money, homie, on football until it wins a national championship. Then I've got $250 million to play with, because more money comes pouring in, just like it did at the University of Alabama. So that's why you're both wrong.
That's crazy.
100 million. All to football.
I was 90%.
Yeah, but it could cost you one player. John, what do you think about my approach?
I don't agree with it because I'm not sure if you could get, well, I see the logic behind it. And this was I think this was my idea when we were talking yesterday. Now that I look back on it, I think this whole concept was a bad idea.
The concept
of this hypothetical of spending $100 million. I think it's
we talked it over for 30 minutes Sunday night.
I know, but I changed my mind.
Okay, you just want to change gears here?
I don't care. Are we getting much response on this?
We're getting a ton of response. How much?
Yeah, here's one that says Dave Pimpman Hooker. I mean, what kind of response is that?
I don't know what that means, but I kind of like it. The basketball team can generate a significant amount of revenue, but John, I'm of the mindset that it's about in people's view about what is spent currently, which is about 10% of the athletic budget. When it's compared to football, I think that, I'll ask you, would Tennessee rather make the Final Four in football or basketball? Would Tennessee fans that you talk to rather make the Final Four in football or basketball?
Football.
Caleb, it's not even close, is it?
No.
Was this question even worth posing?
Well, I wanted to take the next step. So, Final Four football, national championship basketball.
Football.
In one season, they might take national championship basketball because I think they're feeling that very elusive. I feel like that national title in basketball feels so elusive to them. But after they got a national title in basketball, then I think they would take it in football. They'd take a Final Four in football over a second national title in basketball. How about that? But that first one just would be like so validating for the athletic program since they've already got one in women's basketball and football. That would feel very validating.
All right, John, you bring up the Diamond Balls. I know that you followed them closely. You've been a big baseball guy. People may not know that because Tennessee's baseball team has been up and down since John's been at the Knoxville News Sentinel. But, John, I'm curious, which sport is more popular now? Is it the Diamond Balls or is it Lady Balls basketball? Now that not only has there been struggles, but Pat Summitt was an incredible draw as well. What is more significant, more popular?
Oh, it's not even close. It's a baseball program with Tony Vitello.
That sounds weird to me, but you've been to some of the games. They're filling the stands.
Yeah, and they've expanded the seating, and they're filling it up, and there'll be more people that can get in next year. I really believe if they wanted to go that route and make it bigger, I think they could do what LSU has done and have a 10,000 seat stadium and fill it up. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's become a tough ticket. You have people out there in cold weather watching, 4,500 people. And there's just the enthusiasm. I hear people talking about baseball all the time. And then, as one of our tweeters noted, Tony Vitello is popular with the ladies. I won't say it the way he said it, but he is popular. He's tremendously popular. He's one of the most popular coaches Tennessee's ever had, maybe the most popular.
We actually have audio from somebody on the message board. What was that about Tony Vitello?
That's hot.
Real hot is what the ladies say. Over and over. Tony Vitello shows up and he's wearing one of those outfits from Dumb and Dumber, like the colored tuxedos, and the ladies still say,
"That's hot."
I've never seen anybody affect women's fandom like Tony Vitello has. All right, I'll ask you this, Caleb, I'll get to you, but John, can the Lady Vols ever get back? Caleb, give that some thought to being bigger than the men as long as Vitello's there.
I don't think so. I mean, Tennessee's not interested in paying that kind of money for a women's basketball coach. I mean, it's not going to go out and give Kim Mulkey $3 million or $4 million or whatever it would take. It's just not going to do that. That's not how it goes about its business. It doesn't do that with any coaches.
Caleb,
that's what it would take. You'd have to do that. You'd have to get an elite coach. I mean, Tennessee's got lucky with coaching hires. I mean, Rick Barnes is a great example of that. He just fell in their lap.
He did, and he knew he had the job when he left the other UT. Caleb, can the Lady Vols reclaim any sort of position that they had in college basketball, but more so, can they surpass Tony Vitello in Tennessee fandom popularity? If you buy what John's selling, can they ever do that?
If the Lady Vols, and John, I said this Monday, and you may disagree, but I think the Lady Vols are held back by the Lady Vol contingency, and it's almost like a mafia where they demand that the program be ran a certain way that is so old school. It's almost like Notre Dame in football, which is why there's a reason Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship since 1988, and they are falling behind as women's basketball is getting trendy everywhere else, including at LSU, South Carolina. There's the Caitlin Clark story. You know, kind of the chippiness, the trash talking. That's something that the Lady Vols culture will never accept because it's, Pat Summitt. It was, I said it yesterday, they want to make women's basketball a gentleman, I guess a ladies game, not a fun, exciting game the way Tennessee is making baseball. And I don't think they're accepting that they need to change with the times and make it more trendy and make it more fun and embrace the beef between coaches and players, because LSU and South Carolina in women's basketball, Dawn Staley versus Kim Mulkey is going to be a storyline for years to come because they clearly don't like each other. And I think that, and then if you want to go for looks, because Tony Vitello, someone just pointed it out, go hire the Grand Canyon University coach Molly Miller. That will get people in the stands.
Yeah, she's a looker, by the way. John, she's doing all right for herself. With these, I think the thing that you have to factor in is even if they went out and hired a Kim Mulkey, they're not going to hire a Pat Summitt, who was so beloved by this community, who rarely ever, I guess the one not playing UConn, we could call that a misstep, but didn't have any PR missteps that I'm aware of. Even if they hired a Kim Mulkey, they're not getting a Pat Summitt. I think they could get to the point where they're really, truly competing for championships again, but winning multiples, John, I don't see that happening anymore. I think the sport has also changed.
Well, no, but I mean, Kim Mulkey's won 4 national championships. Dawn Staley's won 2, could win a 3rd this year. I mean, the great coaches in that sport are still going to win multiple championships. If you put Kim Mulkey at Tennessee, she'd win multiple championships. I truly believe that, because what she would do, it's not just about coaching or guarding an inbounds passer. It's about NIL money. And Pat Summitt would have been, that's why I think Pat Summitt would have done well in this era. People wouldn't like telling Pat Summitt no. If Pat Summitt asked somebody to help her with her program and say that we really need more NIL money, they would want to help her. And I think Kim Mulkey is so persuasive. People don't want to tell Kim Mulkey no either in Louisiana. She's going to get what she wants. They're probably going to have a new arena there, and she'll have a lot to do with it. So I just think that kind of coach, you're never going to have another Pat Summitt. But I think to Caleb's point about times have changed, we look at the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. I mean, who saw that coming, that a women's player could do that? But then when Dave and you bring up, you've got now with LSU and South Carolina. Why should LSU and South Carolina be great rivals in anything? I mean, they're just, there's no real history there, but you can create it automatically with just like this. two coaches tree there. I think it's all about coaching. It's the same way with Tennessee baseball and Tony Vitello. He's not just a really good coach. He works obsessively. He works so hard at recruiting. And he's great at marketing his program. He's great with the media. He's great with the fans. And his players pick up on that. And they're good with the fans. They're good with the media. So you build a whole program. So you could do that with Lady Vols basketball. You just got to get the right coach. But you got to be able to pay. You got to be willing to pay for it.
Agreed. John, question I have for you that we're going to get to here in 1 minute exactly is, if not Georgia, who? Let's talk some football on Off the Hook Sports. Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right. John, I ask you this. If not Georgia, who? When you look at the college football landscape, both at the SEC level and nationally, it looks like Georgia might have a stranglehold the way Alabama had under Nick Saban. Could be in the beginning stages of that type of run. So if not Georgia, who? Let's talk some football here. Hit like and subscribe.
I think, Dave, if you're going with, if you go nationally, Ohio State is an obvious choice, but it just keeps coming up short under Ryan Day. I would probably go with a dark horse that other people wouldn't pick. I really like Ole Miss. And I know Lane Kiffin has not taken a team to that level. He's certainly improved Ole Miss. I think he's done an amazing job. But he's brought in some really good players through the transfer portal. And I think he's brought in the kind of guys who are going to be, they're going to be united, and they're kind of in their history. They went to Ole Miss because it's like a fresh start, and I'm sure there's a lot of NIL money involved, and also because of Lane Kiffin. But I think there's an opening there behind Georgia in the SEC, and I would take Ole Miss over probably anybody right now.
Caleb?
So is this about, if not Georgia, then who to win the SEC or to win it all?
Let's start SEC, and then let's go nationally. How about that?
Okay, because, my question, because I'm on the playoff soapbox, and I'm just going to have to respond to you two guys. Who cares who wins the SEC? 12 teams are making the playoff. This is the stupidity of the playoff. So I don't really care who wins the SEC championship right anymore because they devalued it, and that's my soapbox for the day. Greg Sankey screwed it up. All right, so now beyond that, to who is going to challenge Georgia, if not to win the SEC? I mean, I'm going out there, guys, but I'm sticking with Tennessee. I am so high on Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava, and I know y'all can call me crazy all day, but Josh Heupel went all in on 2024. My question is, you say if not Georgia, then who? I say if not 2024 for Tennessee, then when?
Well, how about John, Tennessee being in that conversation for the SEC? Do you like Tennessee or Ole Miss more of the season?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a toss-up. I like Tennessee a lot. I think it's a playoff caliber team. I've kind of downgraded Alabama, and maybe that's a mistake based on history. But my top four teams would be Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas. And I'd have Alabama fifth, probably Oklahoma sixth.
Okay, so those are just SEC teams. What about nationally? Your thoughts on the Vols, but first, if not Georgia, who nationally for the national title? Brought to you by Don Self, State Farm agent right there in Chattanooga. Right down below, donself.net, donself.net. 40 years. 40 years they put their business on taking care of their customers. Customer service still matters. It absolutely does. So I know everybody's shopping price, but when you make that claim, you want to make sure you're taken care of. DonSelf.net, DonSelf.net, right below. John, so if not an SEC team, I guess, who else do you like to replace Georgia as the potential favorite, which I think they are by most booking services we use? BetUS, John.
Well, it's hard to look past Ohio State. To me, that's just obvious because of accumulation of talent. And no, it hasn't won a national championship. It came so close in the 22 season when it almost beat Georgia in the semifinal game. So, yeah, to me, it's not even – I can't even think of anybody else. I guess you could throw Oregon out there with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. That would be probably my second pick. I expect Michigan to drop off significantly without Jim Harbaugh. Florida State, I don't think will be as good. Clemson, it's fallen behind. It's a good program, but I don't see it as a championship contender. And when I look at it that way, it makes me think of the opportunities for the SEC. We tend to lump the Big Ten and the SEC together now. They're the two superpower conferences. But really, I think right now the SEC has a big advantage there, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for SEC teams to get into the playoffs.
Caleb, I know you liked Tennessee this season. They're plus 3,500 to win the national title. Would you lay a hundy on that?
Yeah, I'd lay 100 on that.
How about 1,000, Caleb?
No, I'm not. No, I don't bet that big.
No, just
John. It's funny you say that because I was, as Dave asked the question, and I wanted to go national too, and then I kind of thought, you're right. Outside of Ohio State, like USC, Lincoln Riley's shown me nothing to show that he cares about defense whatsoever. And Michigan, I do agree with the drop off. My problem with Ohio State is that, look, I'm sorry, Ryan Day has chronically underachieved there. Given the talent level he's had, Ohio State, and John, I don't know how you'll feel about this because you're from the area, but I feel like Ohio State is right there with LSU, where you could sleepwalk your way to a national title given the talent that's surrounds the school. And those are my top two. And Ryan Day has lost to Michigan 3 times in a row, and now they're bringing in Chip Kelly. I think that was forced on Ryan Day, and trust me, I don't think that's going to go well. I think that's going to cause an implosion to a certain degree. And so I'm with you. I think it's just the SEC. And speaking of, I did leave out LSU. I think LSU could challenge Georgia because, again, I think LSU, you could get a robotic coach and wake up one day and you just have a national title team because there's so much talent in that state.
So, John, did any of these numbers surprise you? The money line, according to our friends at BetUS, Georgia is a plus 330. Alabama is a plus 480. They would actually be second on the list. Texas is a plus 700. And then you get to Oregon's a plus 900. So a 9-1 favorite, essentially. And then you get into Alabama. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Ohio State was a plus 480. Alabama was a plus 1,400. I misspoke. My apologies. Does it surprise you that Ole Miss is just a plus 1,500 just behind the other SEC schools, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, but behind Alabama and LSU by just plus 100? People think a lot of Ole Miss's chances to win a national championship this year, and that's not a big betting community there to affect the line. John, Ole Miss at a plus 1,500. What if Lane Kiffin wins a national title? My, oh, my.
Yeah, we still wonder about him because he hasn't gone to that level. He hasn't made a playoff, and some people don't think maybe. I think Ole Miss has an image like it's overachieving. It's kind of, some people I think probably might look at Ole Miss the way they looked at Kentucky when Kentucky would win 10 games with kind of a accommodating schedule, and they think, yeah, that's nice, but that's all they can do. I think you should look at Ole Miss differently because it just won 11 games, and this transfer talent is impossible to ignore. I mean, I'd bet on Ole Miss before I'd bet on Ohio State.
I would too. I think I'd bet on 5 SEC teams before I bet on anybody outside of the SEC this year. And I normally don't say that. There's usually 1 or 2 outside of the SEC, but I don't see anybody in the field this year outside of the SEC.
Well, and now with Jim Harbaugh gone, do you think the Big Ten concerned at all, John?
I think it should be. I'm not a big fan of promoting assistants for jobs like that. I mean, the players always love the assistant. Jim Harbaugh gave him his blessing, said that was the obvious choice, but I don't think that usually works out that well.
General Nealon was an assistant the year before he was promoted.
And Fulmer, John.
I know. I remember commenting on that in a column on that, and I said I think it's a bad move. I was proved wrong later, but at the time I didn't agree with the decision.
On General Nealon. I like that. Be sure and check out John's column. He is fantastic. He throws heat each and every day, and he joins us each and every Tuesday. John, Caleb, pick one team, just one team, that is most likely to upset Georgia. Caleb, you go first.
I'm sticking with Tennessee. I think this year Tennessee has the chance to do it.
Okay, John.
And John, you weren't on as much last year. I'm not the homer you think I am covering them. I've been very critical of Tennessee in the past, so Dave can vouch for me on that.
Don't be so defensive, Caleb. And nobody calls you a homer. I think there's some insecurity in that area. No, I would probably go. I think Tennessee's a good pick. I just don't. I'm not a believer in Texas. I don't know why. I mean, it just made the playoff. It's rolling. It's got NIL money, but I would still I would go with Ole Miss or Tennessee. I think I'd pick Ole Miss.
John, I was having the same conversation in my head about Texas. What? Not to keep you too long, but why do we not believe in Steve Sarkisian?
I'm not sure because I didn't think he would make the playoff. He didn't. He exceeded my expectations last year.
Yeah, I think sorry.
No. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe because Texas has been down so long, and we look at Steve Sarkisian's history, and he didn't do that well at Southern Cal. There was some. I don't know. It's an image thing, and I may be totally wrong. But I just don't. I mean, I believe in Lane Kiffin more than Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, and where I would add to that is that Texas got to the playoff last year on the backs of a win at Alabama that was not the Alabama team that made the playoff. That was not a good team they beat, the Alabama team. And if they play them in October or November, I think they lose by 47 points. And so the Big 12 was bad. I'd give Steve Sarkisian a shot for every point he lost by. But okay, sorry. But I genuinely think that's the thing. And the Big 12 was weak. I think if they played Oklahoma in the Big 12 title, they'd have lost again. That's where I land on it.
Well, let's go outside the SEC again for a second. I really like what Dan Lanning did at Oregon. I know he didn't make it to the playoff, but I guess if I'm looking, I can't find anybody outside the SEC other than Ohio State, and I'm not a true believer in Ohio State with Ryan Day, as is Caleb. So I would just probably, if I was going to bet on somebody making a move, it would be Oregon. I like Dan Lanning.
John, I like that. Today, John's appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Apex Apparel. Check this out. What a fantastic shirt I had embroidered. And you just look at it. The TriStar Hats Company is combined with Apex Apparel to make sure that you have all of the fantastic products you need, promo products and more. It's complete branding right across the board. They are fantastic. And I'll remind you with Apex, They can do screen printing, promo products, signage, embroidery. Headquartered out of Knoxville, but national dealers. Call for 15% off your first order. 15% off your first order. Call Tyler, 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, or go to orderapexapparel.com, orderapexapparel.com. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here, right down below. John, fantastic job as always. Thank you for working through the technical difficulties. You are a true gentleman and a saint.
Okay, thanks, Dave. See you, Caleb.
He is John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel each and every Tuesday. Going to take a look at Tennessee's linebackers. They should be pretty good. Stay tuned. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford.
F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Folks, want to take just a second to tell you about our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dynasty Pools and Spas is a place that you can go to for everything. You go to their showroom and you walk in, you pick out your hot tub at Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens, dynastypoolsandspas.com. Go there, pick it out, and it's delivered to you. It's delivered to you with everything, the cover, the steps, everything you need. That's dynastypoolsandspas.com. dynastypoolsandspas.com. The most beautiful, fantastic spas you can possibly find. Relax those muscles. Had bad back lately? That helps. If you're in pain, dynastypoolsandspas.com. dynastypoolsandspas.com. They also have chemicals for your pool and spa. And don't forget about this. With Dynasty Pools and Spas, they are all local. This is made right here. You're supporting Tennessee. That's pretty strong. Stay tuned. We'll be back with Caleb Calhoun to talk Tennessee linebackers in 2 minutes.
Sand and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
A couple of things just occurred to me. And one is that Tennessee should be pretty good at linebacker. I want to get into that. Also, this day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Let's get into it. Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Caleb, how good can Tennessee's linebackers be this year?
This is a position that is probably the most unknown, but the most loaded with possibilities of being great. And there's a reason for that, because there are two key players that we have to mention, obviously. The first is the guy who's returning for his 7th year of eligibility, Keenan Peely, who played just one game last year and is kind of the glue of the defense, seems like a leader, kind of the type of guy you want on your team, going to be the guy that holds everybody together. Then there's the rare talent guy that can be the explosive player. And that player is Arian Carter. And both of them we're expecting big things from this year. Now, obviously, there's a new linebackers coach in William Ing, who I think is better than Brian Jean-Marie, honestly. So that even adds to this.
Let me stop you. Why do you think that?
He just is more proven. And there was not a lot of great linebacker development under Brian Jean-Marie. Jeremy Banks, a couple of years ago, never learned how to play in coverage as a middle linebacker, and they never developed a replacement behind Keenan Peely last year. I think Elijah Herring was the wrong choice at middle linebacker. Now, I get it. You know, if you cover teams long enough, you learn why someone is starting over somebody else because you see that somebody else play and you're like, oh, that's why this other bad player was starting. I still think they could have found somebody else. They could have moved Aaron Beasley back over to middle linebacker if they needed to last year. And so I think Jean-Marie did not manage the rotation properly. And so I think that this year you have some freshmen from the 2023 class that are a lot more experienced now, but you have rare talent in Arian Carter. You have experienced leadership in Keenan Peely, and you have a more proven linebackers coach in William Ing.
I think Arian Carter can be really special. I think he can be really special. I think he was, people I've talked to, banged up a little bit last year, and we don't get any injury information from Josh Heupel, and that's the way he runs his program, and a lot of people do that nowadays, so I'm not incredibly surprised. But a lot of people are talking about Keenan Peely, and I think Arian Carter is not only the emerging star on Tennessee's linebacker core, but Tennessee's defense, of Tennessee's football team, and even possibly of the SEC. I think he's that good, going slightly outside of the position with edge rushers now and how we talk about it. I mean, James Pierce is a playmaker. There's no question. I think Arian Carter can be of that ilk as far as a playmaker. Not the same, not quite as good, Caleb, because I think Pierce is special. But I think he can be in the category of elite playmaker, Arian Carter.
Yes, which would make him exactly what we expected him to be when he first committed a year ago. Look, we're talking about Boo Carter being a starter immediately and being we're giving freshman All-American vibes to Boo Carter. That's kind of what we had expected out of Arian Carter going into last year, isn't it? And we never really got it.
Completely thought that.
Yeah. And so I agree. We're talking about a superstar and then obviously a potential superstar. And that's a perfect combination. The leader at middle linebacker in Keenan Peely and then the elite playmaker in Arian Carter. You could have a deadly combo with those two guys, better than you've had in a long time. And that's why, guys, by the way, when people were asking, it's why I'm so high. It's a part of why I'm so high on Tennessee. Now, a few other guys, I mean, you've got depth here. You've got Jeremiah Tellender, who, by the way, they should have been starting over Elijah Herring at middle linebacker, as we found out down the stretch, quite honestly. And I want to be clear. I'm not trying to knock Elijah Herring. I think he did everything he possibly could. I just think he was physically limited from an athletic standpoint.
I agree. According to Josh Ward, who was nice enough to write up the linebackers for us, we certainly appreciate what he does for us. Tennessee has a new beginning of linebacker with Ing's arrival and the departure of Aaron Beasley. How much do they miss Aaron Beasley, if at all?
If Arian Carter does what he's supposed to do, they aren't going to miss him at all. And I say that with no disrespect to Aaron Beasley. But, yeah, It's like when they lost Marcus Nash. It's like when they lost Joey Kent and then had Marcus Nash. No disrespect to Joey Kent, but Peyton Manning didn't miss him in 1997. So
no. I agree with that, Caleb. I think that, and it's not a shot at Beasley. Now, had Beasley been able to play Sam, had he been able to play outside linebacker as much as he should have, then maybe that's different. He was not a middle linebacker. I think both of us thought he was pretty good there for a while before they had us sliding back to the middle at times, at least getting better. And I mean no disrespect to Beasley either, but just going to tell you that athletically, Arian Carter, from what I've been told, is at a whole different level.
Yes. And by the way, we have to put, because I'm hearing people comment, I do believe Elijah Herring led the team in tackles, but I think Dave could tell you more than I could. That is the most unnecessary stat for judging linebackers in football, isn't it? Tackles. And so it's, I think, I agree. I think Carter could be a star. Now, again, I want to mention, even if he's not, though, the depth is there. We just mentioned Jeremiah Tellender, Jalen Smith, Caleb Perry is now going to be a junior. He should be very good. And then you got 2 4-stars committed in Jordan Burns out of Atlanta and Edwin Spielman out of Nashville. And so I think between those, you should have enough options now to work with. Now, obviously, Josh Heupel, I think at every position, doesn't like to go too deep. I think he prefers keeping the guys in a regular rotation. But I think this is going to make things interesting, how that all works.
And then Keenan Pili. Tennessee has been hit or miss like every team in the portal, but Pili was a big, big hit, not just from a play standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint. I can't tell you how many times I've been told that he is a heck of a leader. That's pretty impressive for a guy who transferred, and Caleb, a guy who got banged up pretty early. For him to be considered a leader already, that's a little stunning to me.
Yeah, it's huge. It speaks a lot to his character and the type of defensive player he can be. And again, we were hearing a lot about this last year before he got hurt. That's why I say this linebacker unit is, based on talk, should be elite. Is that fair to say? There's a lot of talk about this linebacker unit that suggests it's elite, but we haven't seen it yet. But Keenan Pili, you're right. We see, if he's anything that we thought he was going to be going into last year, and if Aaron Carter is anything that we thought he was going to be eventually, you're talking about a heck of a tandem, and you're not going to miss who you lost last year.
Yep. And with Simmons, I think there is a disagreement on the message board. He still is around the football. I don't think anybody's knocking him for that, correct?
You mean Herring?
Herring. Excuse me.
No, Herring is around the football, and actually Herring takes proper angles. He's a smart player, and he's a hard worker, and his motor never stops. He just doesn't have a lot of lateral quickness, and that's kind of a big thing you need to play middle linebacker.
Can I be honest with you about Herring? I think that guy's a defensive end. I thought physically that he should play defensive end. I think it's because they're so loaded at that position that they haven't moved him. But is he not a classic case of a guy that under the Philip Fulmer regime, they would have moved him to defensive end, just like they moved everybody up to be faster, right?
I think Herring is too much of a tweener. I like him. I think he's too much of a tweener.
Well, we haven't seen him in, so we don't really know. But
we don't really know.
You might be right.
Yeah, he may be one of those guys. He's not strong enough to play in. He's not fast enough to play linebacker. And quite honestly, Dave, he may not be fast enough to play end. I mean, you want your ends to be really quick off the snap, right?
See, I don't have a problem with his straight ahead quickness. You mentioned the lateral. I'm going to disagree with you there. I think he would be really good at end portions of the program. Brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford. We mentioned them. Selection, best prices, hometown customer service right there in Clinton, Tennessee. Worth the drive. RayVarnerFord.com. RayVarnerFord.com. So anybody else out there in Tennessee's linebacking core that you think could have a major impact? Now, nowadays, strong safety / linebacker, essentially they've replaced it with a nickel. I know this is going outside the position, but I hate just talking about 2 linebackers. The guy at strong safety, the guy at strong safety is kind of a pseudo linebacker, right?
Yes, very much so. But
so
again,
who would you have it there?
Well, you still got some other guys behind these players who had a lot of highly touted potential. We already mentioned Elijah Herring. I mentioned Jeremiah Tellender, who started a lot in place of Herring last year. There's still Jalen Smith, who's now a redshirt freshman who has a lot of potential. Caleb Perry, we've heard a lot about Caleb Perry over the last couple of years. So, and then again, there are 2 commitments at the position this year. Like I said, Edwin Spillman out of Nashville and Jordan Burns out of Atlanta, both 6'2", 215 to 220-ish. They'll probably have to put on a little bit of weight, but I think either of them could back up Keenan Peely at middle linebacker. So Tennessee's got options this year, put it that way. And I think they'll all be there in the spring.
Well, I think this is actually a time to take it really easy on Arian Carter and Keenan Peely. So if both coming off of seasons with injuries, I don't think Arian Carter, you mentioned guys get held out of spring. I don't think he's going to be the topic of conversation a lot because I think he will be limited. Of those guys that'll be limited, I would think it would be Peely and I would think it would be Carter. Limited and spring practice go hand in hand, Caleb. That doesn't mean that you're hurt. That doesn't mean you're going to miss the season. That's just part of spring practice. You're not going to put a guy out there if there's any risk of injury or re-injuring, especially with Keenan Peely, who I believe is almost as old as me. And you don't want to put him out there, nor do you want to put Arian Carter, a guy who's already flashed his potential.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you on all of that.
All right, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history. As Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history, it is March the 12th, 2024. What happened on March the 12th going back? Perhaps back in 1974, my mother was headed to the hospital. Just a tease. A tease.
I wasn't going there, funny enough. But
okay. Okay, what happened on this day back in 1974? I'm kidding. Any year.
Quarter century ago, March 12th, 1999. And just want to, just thanks to the great coaching of Jerry Green, who just, you can't undersell his coaching.
How many times have I started a sentence with that? Thanks to the great coaching of Jerry Green.
Tennessee basketball won its first NCAA tournament game in 16 years at the time. They were a 4 seed. They beat 13th seeded Delaware 62-52. I mean, the imposing Delaware, aren't they the Fighting Blue Hens or something like that? I don't even know. But they beat Delaware by 10. And of course, then the next 2 days later, they played Missouri State and lost by 30. I think that's the game you always cover about how bad they were.
Yes. That was the worst. That was after Delaware, wasn't it?
Yeah, they beat Delaware and then they lost to Missouri State.
The Delaware game was like 44-42. It was one of the ugliest basketball games. I've never been as bored at a sporting event as that game. It was worse to me than the Southwest Missouri State game because at least you had content from the Southwest Missouri State game. The Delaware game was like, I want to go out and play in traffic. I mean, it was awful. Happy birthday, Smoky Mountain Red, who was born on this day back in 1980. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, Smokey's a millennial.
I got a happy birthday from somebody. It's not my birthday yet, man. It's not my birthday yet. Congratulations. I haven't made it there yet. I got a buddy of mine. Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you. It's my 50th birthday tomorrow. But I got a buddy of mine who constantly reminds me, he goes, man, I know there's so many people that died at 49. I'm like, well, why would you keep telling me that? He keeps bringing it up jokingly. So I texted him this morning. I said, I've got like 18 hours left and I've made it. He goes, not yet.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, is that on the me? It's one thing to do those jokes when you're in your 20s, right, Caleb? It's another thing altogether when you're pushing 50.
No, oh my God, that's so wild. Oh my gosh.
I mean, very mean friends. Very mean friends. All right. So, yes, I'm 50 tomorrow. Happy birthday, Smoky Mountain Red. I hope you're handling it better than I am. Interesting situation at the University of Florida that I want to get into. Can you explain what DEI is?
Yes. DEI is, and I get uncomfortable explaining this because people feel so strongly about it either way. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the idea is to try to involve more people of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different races in any sort of industry.
Okay, now everyone's wondering, why in the world are they talking about this? How can it affect my world of college football? Well, according to ESPN, the NAACP asked Black student athletes to reconsider their decisions to attend public colleges and universities in the state of Florida, in response to the University of Florida and other state schools recently eliminating those DEI programs. Wow. Can you imagine Tennessee doing something like that? Or can you imagine Tennessee facing something like that? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, this happened a few years ago, and I wrote an article lambasting the state for this. Now, guys, I don't think it's as big with DEI because that's so murky. And by the way, you can't throw a wet blanket over DEI. Every DEI program is different. Some go too far. Some are just trying to address, some actually think that there are qualified candidates that they're just missing out on because there's a lot of hires, and they're trying to go beyond the hires to see who's qualified. So a lot of times DEI is to actually help them find qualified candidates. Does that make sense? So you can't throw a wet blanket over DEI, just like you can't throw a wet blanket over anything. You can't label everything one thing. So it's a case-by-case basis.
Well, you don't mean a wet blanket. A wet blanket's like a downer. You mean you can't – it's not a cover-all. Not every DEI is the same, right?
Not every DEI is the same. So
you can't lump them all together, to use another
right.
one.
Some have a DEI program because they just are like, we don't have enough qualified. What they'll say is, our talent pool, we're not finding enough people. Maybe we could find more qualified people of a different gender, ethnicity, and I don't want to get into that. But it did happen with Tennessee a few years ago because Tennessee attempted to pass a law. So basically, the ETSU women's basketball team took a knee during the national anthem. And Tennessee attempted to pass a law saying that if players for a team that if schools don't mandate their athletes stand for the national anthem, they would cut funding for those schools. Now, I lambasted Tennessee for that because whatever you feel about standing or kneeling for the national anthem, that's a free speech issue, and states should not get involved in free speech. Period. End of story. And what was going to happen was if you start compelling speech, which that was, you were going to get wrecked in recruiting. That was going to be a national story everywhere. One, because you were going to lose that case to the Supreme Court. So it was going to become a Supreme Court case that you were going to lose, and then you become famous for losing a case in which you tried to compel speech for your athletes, and you lose recruits. That would have hurt Tennessee. I'm not so sure this DEI thing is going to really hurt Florida as much, even with the activism, because, look, there's no DEI in college football athletes. I mean, if you're a good athlete, you're going to get recruited to play no matter what. And so, but I always caution when people get involved in colleges like this, be careful. I've brought up Ole Miss before. Ole Miss religiously fought integration in the 60s. Then they spent 40 years basically letting everybody know they were very unhappy the South integrated. They basically just let you know straight up. Singing the South will rise again, singing all of those things. And Fred White on our show said he didn't go to Ole Miss or didn't even consider them because he saw Mississippi burning. And
yeah, you're right. He did say that. And I just wonder if, let's say you're in Valdosta, which is about halfway between Gainesville and Knoxville or Macon or wherever you are, and Georgia's not recruiting you, and you're down to two schools, and you're down to Florida and Tennessee. And Tennessee, the state, not the school, has gone to bat for NIL for you. And then on the other side, you have this DEI case where the state, the NAACP, is telling players not to go to state schools. That feels like a way different shoe to slip on if I'm a prospect heading to one of those two schools.
It does. And I could see that. You're right. And that type of, I don't know how many players that affects, but I could see you saying, I could see that having a point in what you're saying. And that could end up being intriguing, very intriguing with DEI. So I don't know. But again, this is probably something that will come and go. But I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out. And guys, I'm not going to comment on whether or not the DEI programs at the Florida schools are effective. I don't know. Okay. And so I think saying you're fully against DEI or you're fully for it, you're not being genuine because you don't know exactly how every program at every school or business is implemented.
Well, it doesn't though feel like that the deck is absolutely stacked against Billy Napier of Florida. No matter what happens. Jaden Rashada shows up, maybe not be his fault that the money wasn't there, and he's gone to Arizona. And then you're not a good coach. That's stacked against him. And then you have this. Just further illustrates how I think Florida could hit a downturn. Caleb, you're too young. You don't remember how it was always called the sleeping giant in the 80s before Steve Spurrier took over. It was bad. It was a heck hole. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, all three Florida schools were sleeping giants. And I mean, go back to the U in Miami. Howard Schnellenberger, the difference between him and Bobby Bowden took the Florida State job because that was the only job he could get, really. He was coming out of West Virginia and just wanted a warmer climate. Howard Schnellenberger looked at Miami and he's like, man, if I just keep these South Florida kids here, like I could win a national title. And no one even noticed it. And so I totally agree. It's hard for me to say the deck is stacked against Billy Napier because there's one other gigantic advantage, and it's this. You're the only school in the SEC in Florida. And with the way college football is going, you are now at a premier. Back in the 80s and 90s, Florida State, Miami, and Florida all recruited on equal levels. But now the SEC school is that's going to be the selling point. You're the one in the SEC. So I think Florida will get first dibs on all Florida athletes from Miami to Tallahassee before Florida State or Miami does.
All right, he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Tomorrow we'll visit with you. We look forward to that. And maybe it's my birthday. Maybe. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation